Oh, hi. I'm Dave Wakeling of the English Beat. Welcome to the world of NRG. My dad gave me a guitar when I was 12. A band called the Rocking Berries in Birmingham hadn't paid their tour manager, and my dad said that this guy was selling gear off the back of a van in a pub. So he bought this acoustic guitar and gave it to me, and neither of us knew what to do with it. So I picked it up, and I thought the difficult bit was on your right hand, and the easy bit looked the strumming bit. So I started learning the guitar upside down, the wrong way round. I couldn't get it to work, got books on it, none of the chords worked, so I gave up and I tuned it to my own chords, own sound, my own chords. I started writing songs, and that was the start of it. I met a kid at college. He played guitar as well. We both found out we must bring our guitars in to school one day at lunchtime, and we did, and we got our guitars out, and I said, "You're playing that the wrong way around, you know." And that was Andy from the Beat, and that we started the Beat then in 1979, a couple of years later, and we thought we'd got something brand new, mixing punk and reggae together, the energy of punk and the sinuous backbeat of reggae. And then we saw the specials in Melody Maker, and like, oh, somebody else had done it, and we nearly gave up, but we thought, well, we'll give it a go. And I'm still doing it 35 years later, so thanks for the Rocking Berries guitar. My favourite memory was David Bowie coming in our dressing room. We'd been the opening band at Milton Keynes for 2 nights, and he came in before we went on to say how much he'd enjoyed it and was everything okay. And Saxa, our Jamaican saxophone player who was in his 60s then, piped up and he said, "Come with me, sonny boy." He put his arm round David Bowie and dragged him to the refrigerator. We're all like shocked. And he opens the door and he says, "Can you see any red stripe in there?" And David Bowie said, "No." "Aye." And just closed the door, and David Bowie went off. Came back late, 15 minutes later, with 2 6-packs of red stripe for us. Fantastic. Saxa's all happy and that. "Nice boy that." He said, "Who that anyway? What's him doing in the dressing room?" I said, "Well, it's David Bowie." "Blood clot, me thought he was a waiter." He had his little black, thin white duke, the black tuxedo suit on. Saxa thought he was a waiter. Sent him to get some beer, and he did. So I think that's my favourite memory of the Beat. The Beat made 3 albums with the original lineup, and the first album came out big league. I think there were like 5 hit singles off the first one, and then when the band split up, they brought out "Can't Get Used to Losing You," the Andy Williams song that was on the first album. That was a hit as well, which made it 6 hits on an album, which was 1 more than Thriller in England. Didn't stay at that level, but anyway, we sort of eked out, and then by the 3rd album we were starting to get big hits in America, but not so much hits in England. So, and some of us, I think some of the band felt quite sad about that. Some of us didn't feel so bad. I remember somebody said to me, "But Dave, we're just playing stadiums of 10,000 people every night." And I was like, "Yes, and your point would be." So we packed that in, and then we did general public, me and Roger, and we had quite a few hits in America, more in America than in England. "Tenderness" was a hit. "Never You Done That" was a hit. "Hot You Cool," and then a version of "I'll Take You There," Staple Singers, which went to #1 in the dance charts, although I couldn't dance to any of the mixes. I think they were for robots. And, but it went to #1 anyway. And then Bill Clinton used the song in his campaign and he won. And then Barack Obama used it in his campaign twice and he won. And I still never got invited to the White House. I like to perform Save It for Later. That's my favourite because it's only 3 chords and it doesn't change. It just gets louder or softer or that's it. And you don't have to look at your guitar for that one, so it's dead easy. And it's very hypnotic. And it's one of our favourites, so the crowd always likes it, and it's one of the easiest to do, so that's perfect. The crowd goes nuts and you don't have to do much at all. Terrific. Vox Teardrop guitar, or copies I've had made of the Vox Teardrop, because Brian Jones had one, and he was my favourite Rolling Stone, and I wanted to be him till he died, or was murdered by the Rolling Stones. I did get warned about that. I could have been the Brian Jones of the beat, but I wanted to be him, and I used to play my cricket bat or a tennis racket if there was one about, and pretend it was a teardrop guitar in the mirror when my mum had gone out shopping. And then I even bought a wig from a second-hand shop, a blonde wig, and I cut it into a blonde bob. And as soon as I hear the front door, great, she's gone. Straight up there with the wig, the cricket bat. Most times when you're doing an album, it's all in one huge block, and I've been touring in between, working here, NRG, and working from home sometimes. So it's gone on for a lot longer, and that's really fantastic because you're not sick of it by the time you come to mix it. More me. Am I loud enough? Can you hear anything else? If you can, there's not enough me. And so it's been great to be able to sit and listen to it, and instead of making drastic moves to try and make something right, it's just like, oh, I know what it is. But sometimes that takes a few days, a few listens. You go, oh, I get it. Or if it is something drastic, then you can listen to it plenty of times and go, nah, we got to do that again, or something's got to be replaced. So it's been fantastic for that. It takes an enormous amount of work to make something appear effortless. And when I first showed up, Jay said, you can make it almost perfect if you're willing to put the work in. Nowadays, the combination of the wonderful classic gear plus all the computer technology on top of it, and about 2 million work hours later from me and Kyle, it's proved right. You can get it so it sounds like the orchestra in your head and the song sounds just like you wanted it to sound. My favourite processing technique is sitting back and watching the likes of Kyle and Jay do it properly. I like reverbs and echo. I like echoes and repeats. We're getting to the point on some of the mixes now, the songs where we'll get to do some dubs, there's little dub sections where the drums will start repeating and stuff, and I kind of like doing that. The great thing about NRG, the same as the thing about any great studio, is there's a sense of reverence about what's going on. I mean, not so much me nowadays perhaps, but some of them who are coming in here at the height of their career and quite big pop stars and that. But a lot of us are writing songs from the dark edges of our lives, the ones that get you really emotional and make you run and write it down and that sort of thing. So often the subject matter of songs is very heavily loaded, and it doesn't take much to get somebody who's like that easily spooked. And so it's not quite like a church, it's more like a stable with really good thoroughbred horse carers. So you can get them in, get them to perform and feel comfortable and feel content, like they got the orchestra in their head out, and get them out before they start tearing the place to bits or tearing themselves to bits. And it can get really close. I mean, anybody who's been around studios for years, you see some really funny stuff happen. My favourite gear so far has been the classic amplifiers and one classic Telecaster guitar. And I have a Telecaster at 1979 that I got with the day of my first record deal. And it's a big deal to me. I've took it to every gig. I think it sounds the best, even better than the Teardrop guitars. I'm quite proud of it, and I expected to play that on this record. And I came in and I tried it, and Kyle EQ'd it, and it sounded lovely, and I'm ready to go. And he said, before you start, would you just try our telly out? Just give it a go. Go on. So I did, and I've never really wanted to play my telly since. This thing sounded like a bell. It's like a bell from the late 1950s, I think. The difference, it was just amazing. And I thought my guitar was well set up, but this thing sounded so lovely, played so well, that I think I used that on most of it. I think that the last group that I listened to that I really liked was Foster the People. I like their sounds and I like their sardonic lyrics. I like sardonic lyrics. I like lyrics that sound simple from a distance, and then you go, did he just say that? Yes, he did. Halfway through my life as it is now, I moved here when I was 30. So I had 30 years in England and 30 years in America. And probably looks like another 30 in America. Depends. But, very different. Some good and some bad. Growing up in England with a national health system and national welfare system and free university education, you had the sense as a kid growing up that the people in the street had your back. I don't think that's necessarily true in England now, but it was then when I was growing up, and even about the time as I was leaving, there was a sense that everybody had got everybody else's back. You don't get that sense in America, really. Everybody's got to take care of themselves. That's what we pride ourselves on, our individual freedom, not our collective freedom. Unless it's the Olympics or the armed forces, then we're team spirited. But apart from that, it's sort of every man for himself, isn't it? And sometimes I miss that, but that's the same in England as well now. I think my advice would be to meditate for 5 minutes more per day than you masturbate. And it doesn't really matter then how long you masturbate, so long as you meditate for 5 minutes more. And then that should keep an even balance on things. There's a lot of tension in this game. It's got to come out somewhere, but I think that would keep an even balance. People are more pragmatic about it now, you know. When I wanted to join a group, it was because I didn't want a job, and there was tons of jobs about and I didn't want them. And then I thought, well, if it doesn't work being in a group, I'll just go and get a job then, I suppose. So it wasn't really a leap of huge faith. But now I see people going into the industry with a couple of irons in the fire, so they might play an instrument or they write songs and or they engineer and follow a few different tracks. Anything that you love, follow that. Because if you can't do what you want to do, you might end up doing what you do really well, which is a great second prize, isn't it? Worse than just going and getting a job. So that's what I would say, be diverse. And if you're going to go into the writing thing, don't even bother bringing the song out of the house unless it makes the hairs go up on the back of your neck and you've cried a bit whilst you're writing it. Because if you didn't mean it, and it's not going to affect anybody else. So you've got all of this stuff and you can polish shit, but you can't polish intent. And so if a song's going to connect to somebody, it's got to come from some kind of grimy place in your own dark heart. And unless it affects you when you listen back to it or while you're playing it, there's not much chance that they're going to polish it up to touch other people either. So that's the other. Anybody can write a song nowadays. That don't mean everybody should.